This chapter summarizes the historic development of law enforcement in Malaysia. In the learning objectives, students will be able to discuss the historic development of law enforcement from primitive ancient to English law, explain the principles of policing by Sir Robert Peel in 1829, identify the main law enforcement agencies in Malaysia, summarize the history of policing in Malaysia. The development of law enforcement began in primitive and ancient law. Law enforcement are traced back to the cave dwellers that were expected to follow certain rules or face banishment or even death. Early cave dwelling drawings represent the beginning of law and law enforcement. Prehistoric social order consisted of small family groups living together as tribes or clans. These group living arose customs that everyone are expected to follow, and crimes committed were handled by the victim or the victim's family. The tribe's chief had executive, legislative, and judicial powers, and appointed tribe members to perform special tasks, such as serving as a bodyguard or law enforcers. These systems of law enforcement developed throughout the years in different civilizations, including in Egypt, with the development of court system in 1500 BC, in Greece, with the forms of law enforcement called ephori, whom are investigators, judge, jury, and executioner in 427 BC. In Rome, with the development of written laws called the Twelve Tables in 450 BC. The further development of law enforcement is in English law. The Roman Empire began to disintegrate, and this destroyed just laws and social order. German invaders came to the Roman Britain territory with their own laws and customs. These invaders married those they conquered and produced the Anglo-Saxon people in the 1400 AD. The Anglo-Saxons grouped their farms around small, self-governing, self-policed villages. These informal family groupings over time developed and become more structured, called tithing, which is a group of 10 families enrolled by males. Then, in 1066, William, a Norman that conquered England, had modified the tithing system into the frank pledge system, which requires loyalty to the king's law and mutual local responsibility of all free Englishmen to maintain the peace. In the 12th century, England issued Leges Henrici, establishing arson, robbery, murder, and crimes of violence as being against the king's peace. This sets a precedent for crimes against a person is punished by the state instead of by the victim. In 1215, King John was forced to sign the Magna Carta, which is a list of rights that the group of barons wants to be granted. The Magna Carta forms the modern system of justice and development of England's constitutional government. It is a precedent for democratic government, and individual rights, laid the foundation for requiring rulers to uphold the law, forbade taxation without representation, required due process of law, including trial by jury, and provide safeguards against unfair imprisonment. Among other historic developments of law enforcement includes the Watch and Wards by King Edward I in 1285, Henry Fielding and the Bow Street Runners in 1748, Peelian Reform by Sir Robert Peel in 1829, London Metropolitan Police in 1829, City and Borough Police Force in 1835, and Women in Law Enforcement in 1883. Sir Robert Peel established the London Metropolitan Police Force, which introduced centralised and unified police system in England as well as revolutionising traditional methods in law enforcement. He established a list of principles of policing. This includes number 1, the basic mission for which the police exists is to prevent crime and disorder. Number 2, the ability of the police to perform their duties is dependent upon public approval of police actions. Number 3, police must secure the willing cooperation of the public in voluntary observance of the law to be able to secure and maintain the respect of the public. Number 4, the degree of cooperation of the public that can be secured diminishes proportionately to the necessity of the use of physical force. Number 5, police seek and preserve public favor not by catering to public opinion, but by constantly demonstrating absolute impartial service to the law. Number 6. Police use physical force to the extent necessary to secure observance of the law or to restore order or only when the exercise of persuasion, advice, and warning is found to be insufficient. Number 7. Police, at all times, should maintain a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. The police being only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen in the interest of community welfare and existence. Number 8. Police should always direct their attention strictly toward their functions and never appear to usurp the powers of the judiciary. Number 9. The test of police efficiency is the absence of crime and disorder, not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with it. According to the Legal Affairs Division under the Prime Minister's Department, there are 5 major law enforcement agencies. Let's look into the functions of each of these agencies. The Royal Nation Police has main functions of maintenance of law and order, preservation of peace and security of Malaysia, prevention and detection of crime, apprehension and prosecution of offenders, and the collection of security intelligence, as in accordance to the Section 3, Subsection 3 of the Police Act 1967. The Royal Nation Customs collect revenue and provide trade facilitation through enforcement of and compliance with applicable law to spur economic growth, maintain national security, and public welfare. The Immigration Department of Malaysia is under the Ministry of Home Affairs, which provides services to the Malaysian citizens, permanent residents, and foreign visitors. The functions of the department are as follows: issuing of passports and travel documents to Malaysian citizens and permanent residents, issuing of visas, passes, and permits to foreign nationals entering Malaysia, and managing the movement of people at authorized entry and exit points. Enforcing the Immigration Act 1959 and 1963, Immigration Regulations 1963, Passport Act 1966, Anti-Trafficking in Persons and Anti-Smuggling of Migrants Act 2007, Amendment 2010. The Road Transport Department, providing counter services for licensing of vehicles and drivers, and the enforcement of the Road Transport Act 1987 to ensure safe drivers and safe vehicles. The Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission is dedicated to investigate and prevent any form of corruption and abuse of power as under jurisdictions of Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2009. The history of policing in Malaysia began with the Charter of Justice in Penang in 1807. However, the roles of policing had begun earlier during the Malacca Sultanate, where laws and enforcement existed. Laws at the time are focused towards adat laws or Sharia laws, while the law enforcement is done by Temenggung and Hulu Balang institutions. During the absence of the Sultan, the Bendahara has the absolute power to impose punishment. Temenggung acted as an officer as his job is to catch criminals, build prisons, and execute sentences. The Penghulu also have their own police force in which the main task of this team is to collect taxes and enforce laws as well as keeping the village safe. These systems are followed by other Malay states. After Malacca was conquered by Portuguese in 1511, the Portuguese ruled Malacca militarily as policing duties is done by the Portuguese soldiers. Malacca became a cosmopolitan and the Portuguese used the capitan system where tribes are placed under a tribal chief that acts as a police institution. After the Dutch colonialism in 1641, the Dutch used a military system and continued to use the capitan system introduced by the Portuguese. After the European population increased, there is a need for police officers. Thus, a police force was established. It was called the Burger Guard, and it was accountable to the Council of Justice consisting of Dutch people living in Malacca. The Burger Guard also consists of Dutch people living in Malacca. Its lower members are the locals. In 1795, the Dutch gave temporary ownership of the Malacca territory to British and permanent ownership in the Anglo-Dutch Treaty of 1824. Captain Farquhar was appointed governor of the British Army, but Dutch officials continued to retain their positions. Council of Justice and Burger Guard continued their responsibility to enforce law and keep public order. In 1825, British began their public administration in Malacca, with W. T. Lewis appointed as police chief that was responsible over the fire brigade, control over the market, and even the waters too. He acted as land superintendent and revenue collector. Due to piracy being a major criminal problem at the time, Lewis established a permanent base of police stations that functions as a semi-military. Lewis is the founder of the Malacca Police Force that is the most efficient police force in the Strait settlements. In 1939, World War II and the situation in Malaya became alarming when the Japanese invaded Indochina. Strait Settlements Police Chief A. H. Dickinson was elected as Public Safety Officer and responsible to compose Malaya's defense against the threat of Japanese military attack. However, in 1941, Japanese army landed in Kelantan and Terengganu, but their advance could not be broken as the police force was divided. The fall of Singapore into the hands of Japan marked the disappearance of the Strait Settlements police forces, the federated Malaya states, and the non-federated states. This marked the dark age for the police institutions in Malaya as the Japanese set up a military administration. The police force continued to function but was used as a tool of repression in the Japanese ironclad system of government. The Japanese occupation brought two developments in the police institution in Malaya. First, locals can carry out policing duties without leadership of English officers. The stratification system of police personnel based on separation between foreign and local officers could not be continued after the end of the Japanese occupation. Second, the Japanese hatred of the Chinese caused a conflict between the Chinese and the Malays. The oppressed Chinese fled to the jungle to enter Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army (MPAJA), which was founded by the Communists. The police force that hunted the guerrillas was mostly made up of Malays. The direct effect of this situation erupted after the surrender of the Japanese army. It took the British more than 2 weeks to establish Malaya. During this transition period, guerrilla fighters emerged from the jungle and took power in several places. They have taken this opportunity to take revenge. In 1945, the Japanese army surrendered and the British Military Administration (BMA) was established to administer Malaya. Then, the Civil Affair Police Force (CAPF) was formed to perform policing duties and was headed by H. B. Langworthy. This became an important turning point in the history of the development of police institutions in Malaya, as this was the first single police force with a central administration covering the whole of Malaya. In rehabilitating police institutions, intensive training courses began at Kuala Lumpur Police Depot. After the British military administration took over, the Malayan People's Anti-Japanese Army was dissolved. The Malayan Communist Party (MCP), led by Chin Peng, waged violence by killing European managers, destroying rubber trees and mines, attacking police stations and members of the security forces, as well as crippling the Malayan economy by carrying out Operations Scorched Earth. In 1948, Sir Edward Gent declared state of emergency and banning the MCP. The government had taken steps to fight communism by coordinating military movements, relocating Chinese to new villages, introducing identity cards, curfews, conduct nerve warfare, and psychological operations, as well as increasing the effectiveness of intelligence gathering against the communists by setting up special branches placed under police control. The Malaya Federal Police was given the responsibility to control the insurgents. In 1950, at the height of the communist uprising, the police force was the largest security force. The police force played a key role in planning a strategy to combat the communists. Police forces hunted down and exterminated communists in the forest, countryside, and the city. The Special Branch, as the country's main intelligence body, acted agilely and efficiently. The police also played an important role in the success of the psychological warfare against the communists. The role of the police force in times of emergency is very clear if you look at the number of members who were killed, which was 1,346, compared to other security forces, which was only 519. The MCP withdrew the rest of its troops to Malaya-Thailand border and tried to gather and restore its strength. In 1807, the paramilitary concept of police force was formed in the modern policing institution. They were responsible in carrying out policing and military duties. In 1948, the MCP declared its first armed insurgency by attacking police stations, killing and injuring citizens that did not give support to the communist movement, as well as destroying public property to cripple the national economy. The MCP strategies includes, first, weakening and destroying the Malayan economy with Operation Scorched Earth on plantations and mines. Number 2, dominating free areas. Number 3, leading the insurgency through the Liberation Army to be able to unite the free areas to form a communist republic. In 1948, to combat the insurgency and hunt down communist terrorists in the jungle, a military-based force was formed named the Flying Squad. However, due to its impractical and inappropriate name, it was changed to Jungle Squad, aligned with its role in eradicating communist terrorists in the wilderness. Jungle Squad is placed under the command of the district police chief, consisting of 15 to 20 members per unit, and each unit is placed in one area. This team has dealt with such a great blow to the communist terrorists. In 1952, General Sir Gerard Templer replaced Sir Henry Gurney and was given the job of High Commissioner and also as Director of Operations, which meant he was responsible for governing Malaya and directing the movement against the communist threat. He announced three priorities. First, rearrangement of all police forces and changes in their roles. Second, establishment of good intelligence organization. Third, information services, including broadcasting and film, needs to be coordinated and used for psychological warfare. The Commissioner of Police for the City of London, Colonel Arthur E. Young, served in Malaya as Commissioner of the Malaya Federal Police Force. He and the Templar played an important role in the formation of the police force that now exists in the country. Colonel Young reorganized the police headquarters for the administration of the Malayan Federal Police Force and divided into 5 departments, namely Department A, managed the administration; Department B, managing the movements, jungle companies, additional police, and special police; Department C, managed finances, stores, buildings, and property; Department D, Criminal Investigation Department; and Department E, Special Branch. Colonel Young introduced Operation Ready to Serve, and a badge was issued to mark this movement that was worn every day by officers. In Commissioner's Instruction Number 36, he states, "It has been our iconic misfortune that because of the emergency we have been compelled in the course of our duty to protect the public from terrorism by the imposition of restrictive ordinances rather than by cooperation and trust, whilst the need exists, the protection of the public from all forms of terrorism will remain our foremost preoccupation. Nevertheless, we will simultaneously take every opportunity to show evidence of a desire to become a service to the public, both respected and esteemed. Another change in the name of Rumah Pasung or Shallot House to Police Station to eliminate negative views and attitudes towards the police. In 1958, Duli Yang Maha Mulia Sri Paduka Baginda Yang di-Pertuan Agong Almarhum Tuanku Abdul Rahman Ibni Almarhum Tuanku Muhammad agreed to give the title of Royal to the Malaya Federal Police Force, and at the moment known as the Royal Federation of Malayan Police. According to the Duli Yang Maha Mulia Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the conferment of Royal is an honor to the excellent service and loyalty shown by the police personnel in carrying out the task of maintaining peace and order since the establishment of the police force in 1807 in Penang. The Royal Award is also an appreciation of the government and the people of this country for the key role and importance played by the police force in defeating the communist insurgency during the first emergency, which is in 1948 till 1960. In 1956, the Malayaization plan of replacing British officers in the Federation of Malaya Public Service by local officers began. The actual process was first implemented by W. L. R. Carbonell, who took over the post of Police Commissioner from Young in 1953 by way of promotion. In 1954, there were two locals holding the position of Deputy State Police Chief, who are Muhammad Saleh bin Ismail in Negeri Sembilan and Talib bin Lid Sut in Terengganu. By Malaya's Independence Day on 31 August 1957, almost the entire administration of Criminal Investigation Department headquarters was taken over by local officials. The federal government is estimated to have spent 10 billion ringgit in compensation and gratuity to foreign officials. As a result of the smooth transition, the effectiveness of Federal Police Force of Malaya is not affected, but instead can be adapted and developed to face the challenges later. In 1961, the bestowal of flags by Duli Yang Maha Mulia Sri Paduka Baginda Yang di-Pertuan Agong Tuanku Said Putra Ibni Almarhum Said Hassan Jamalulail took place at the Jalan Gurni Police Training Centre, Jalan Semarak, Kuala Lumpur. According to the Duli Yang Maha Mulia Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the bestowal of the flags in an appreciation for the glory and loyalty shown by the police in performing their duties as peacekeepers and protectors of the people during the country's emergency for 12 years. He also stressed that since the state of emergency was declared in 1948, the police force had been given the primary responsibility of fighting and crushing the MCP insurgency. Despite the shortage of police personnel, including the auxiliary police and special constabulary, they have successfully launched a military operation against the communists through the country. They defend the sovereignty of the country. The May 13 incident was one of the country's biggest racial crises, including the three largest races, namely Malays, Chinese, and Indians. However, the police, with the help of the military, managed to control this situation from continuing prolonged. It is responsibility of the police to restore order, securing the country, as well as establish stability, and in carrying out the task during the 13 May incident. PDRM managed to play its role effectively due to the ability and efficiency of its members to act and their impartial, fair, and just manner of action. When the situation returned to normal, the police force through the special branch continued to act more carefully and more sensitively on sensitive issues that could trigger interracial resistance and fights. Indeed, the role played by the police in fostering unity by trying to prevent the outbreak of racist crisis has never been widely publicized, although it has proven to be very effective. In resolving a single racist problem that could trigger interracial friction, PDRM acted cautiously. An issue is resolved through consultation and advice. Both PDRMs had to use the law to ensure that an issue could not be spread and exploited to trigger a racist crisis. In addition to racist extremists, the country also faces threats from political and religious extremists. The police do not abuse their power to restrict the political and religious rights and freedoms of a citizen. What is focused on its actions of an individual or group that uses politics or religion to provoke unrest or create conflict or crisis that can affect the harmony of society and national security. In 1968, MCP launched its second armed uprising, and in this was followed by the North Kalimantan Communist Party (PKKU) in 1969. Due to the shift among themselves, the Communist Party Malaya split into three, namely first, the original CMP, second, the Marxist-Leninist Communist Party, and third, the Communist Party of Malaya, the revolutionary group. They intensified guerrilla warfare in the jungles of the peninsula, Sabah and Sarawak, and acted violently by killing police and army officers, including the assassination of Inspector General of Police Tan Sri Abdul Rahman Hashim and Perak Police Chief Tan Sri Hu Chong Kong. They also sabotaged the bombing of the National Monument and thwarting the East-West Highway project by destroying construction equipment worth about 10 million ringgit. They also sought to increase the support of Malays because they were aware that without the support of the Malays, their movement would not succeed. Therefore, they established a party called Parti Persaudaraan (PAPERI), whose purpose was to attract the support and sympathy of the Malays. When Papuri failed to influence the Malays, MCP established the Malayan Malay Nationalist Revolution Party based on the Nasacom concept, which supposedly aimed to unite all communist, nationalist, and religious forces towards establishing what is called a mixed democratic government. However, the communist attempts in the peninsula, Sabah and Sarawak this time also failed. The police and army played a key role in fighting the communists in all parts of the country, whether in the wilderness, countryside, and in the cities. With the effective military action, the security forces have succeeded in killing the communist guerrillas in the jungle, and many have been captured or surrendered due to the pressure by the security forces. In addition, the security forces also, through the actions of the Special Branch, managed to destroy the Communist Underground Lines network and United Lines that operate in the towns and villages. This means that the police force responsible for dealing with the internal insurgency with the help of the military managed to save the country from falling into the hands of the communists. Now, the communists in our country have weakened, but they are trying to continue their movement with new strategy known as the Back to the Masses. In 1984, the Marxist-Leninist Communist Party of Malaya and the Malayan Communist Revolutionary Faction united and formed a new party called the Malaysian Communist Party. This means that there are three communist parties in Malaysia: MCP led by Chin Peng, Malaysian Communist Party, and Sarawak Communist Organisation. The 12-year state of emergency ended in 1960, declared by His Majesty the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the late Sultan Hishamuddin Alam Shah Al-Hajj Ibni Al-Marhum Sultan Alidin Sulaiman Shah. To celebrate the historic event, a victory parade was held at the Selangor Club grounds on 1 August 1960. All units of the Federal Armed Police Forces of Malaya and the British, including the police force, took part. In the mid-1960s, the crime prevention system was not very effective as crime incidents increased alarmingly. In 1967, the Research and Planning Branch of the PDRM drafted and compiled a new concept called the Saleh System, which was named after Inspector General of Police Tun Saleh Ismail, the second Inspector General of Police, who presented the system in an effort to increase the effectiveness of crime eradication by directly involving the public. In 1968, the system was implemented in Petaling Jaya and it proved effective as crime rate was reduced in the area. Instructions were issued throughout the PDRM team order so that this system is implemented in all contingents. The main purpose of this plan is to train police officers to be more responsible and acceptable to the public as friends. Thus, the system is expected to change the pattern of police personnel so that they realize that their services are much needed as they are a law enforcement officer. The directive also explains in detail its objectives, namely, first, cultivate feelings of the people by being alongside with the people who run the beat or known as guard duty in order to gain trust. Second, provide immediate assistance to the public by being prepared for calls for assistance and receiving complaints. Third, facilitate work by adding and improving the flow of information. Fourth, providing an attractive system to protect or reducing crime rates. And fifth, instilling enthusiasm in police officers relating to their duties by consolidating the knowledge gained. This system is implemented in the following ways. First, each police station area is divided into patrols, sectors, wards, and zones, with clear boundaries showing where the area is located, competitive factors, wide area, and so on. One sector can be made from one beat or more, or one patrol or more, or one beat and one patrol. Two sectors or more becomes one ward. Two or more wards become one zone. Second, officers, lower rank members, and constables are given responsibilities in certain areas to enable them to understand their respective areas and be responsible for any incidents that occur due to police negligence. Third, each zone is under supervision of officers and lower rank members who guard the ward. The zone officer is responsible to the district police chief. Fourth, elected lower rank members or constables guard and carry out beat duties, patrols, and sectors will be stationed for at least 12 months to enable them to know the ins and outs of the area and its inhabitants. Fifth, officers, lower rank members, and constables are required to study, get to know, and have friendly communication with the residents of their respective areas to create public confidence in them. They must also try to gather information about their respective areas. Six, if possible, officers, lower rank members, and constables will live in their respective areas and move in their areas. 7. With complete knowledge of each resident in their respective areas, any incidents will be easily detected. 8. With the knowledge will also create the confidence and safety of police personnel to carry out their duties. And number 9, the experience and knowledge gained by the police personnel in their respective areas will further enhance efficiency and create a sense of responsibility among members. To create and implement the study fully, i.e. before the beat areas, patrols, sectors, and wards, a thorough study has been made in various terms of position, area, population, and race breakdown, crime rate, gangs, map, sensitivity of historical areas such as complaints or conflict between factions, political situations, and subversive activities. The operation of the Saleh system is streamlined with regular beat patrols including walking, cycling or motorcycling, and mobile patrol vehicles. Members on patrol are provided with walkie-talkies to make it easier for them to contact or to be able to move and act quickly when an incident occurs. The Saleh system creates a beat police huts in cities or in villages across the country. Police huts are established in areas where the need has been identified, such as in areas that are frequently visited by people, residential areas, and also selected villages. These police huts are usually headed by a member with the rank of corporal and two constables. To ensure the smooth running of this system, information is created and mobilized in each station. This room equipped with various information to facilitate police officers to carry out patrol and beat duties including number 1. Area map. Number 2. Records of the offense, the type of offense, the modus operandi of the crime, the personal details of the suspect, the places where the crime took place, and so on. And number 3. Other information deemed necessary. The effectiveness of the Saleh system in curbing, controlling, and eradicating crime cannot be denied. The presence of police personnel will create public confidence in the police. A good relationship between the two parties will foster mutual understanding of each other's problems. Thus, the cooperation and support for the police, especially in the effort to prevent crime, can be further enhanced. In 1968, Tun Abdul Razak, who was the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Home Affairs, managed to involve the public. Seen from the aspect of the police's relationship with the public, the Saleh system has also succeeded in creating a situation where the public no longer considers the police as a feared institution, but rather as a friend who provides help when needed. The existence of good police public relations will make it easier for the police to perform their duties as national peace and security officers.